Hello again everybody, this is Zach Rollins of Zach Rollins Guitar Lessons, and today in this video I want to talk about what it means to play guitar with control. And when I use the term control, I don't refer just to the physical competency behind the playing, but also the distinct, mature quality of the sound that comes as a result of that competency. Think of players like Gary Moore, Eddie Van Halen, or Chet Atkins. How even though they are three totally different sounding players, their playing is instantly recognizable. It's all usually very cleanly performed, it's all very expressive, and when they play it, they all make it look pretty effortless in their own ways. In other words, this caliber of player has exceptional control over the guitar. Now, the level of control that you see from all the great players throughout the years is something that takes years of practice to attain, but it's also something that you should shoot for at any stage of skill that you are at on the guitar right now. So even if you can only play simple parts on the guitar, you should do your best to try to play them with as much ease and as cleanly as possible. Thankfully, there are a handful of specific things that you can work on in your practice to intentionally develop your sense of control on the guitar. And in this video, I want to show you three major ways that you can do that, starting with using stricter hand positioning, improving your fretting and picking synchronicity, and also learning how to better control your dynamics. One of the most common things I see holding back a lot of even long-time players from reaching their full potential is simply their poor left-hand posture. And in contemporary guitar playing over the past few decades, there's been a bit of a bad unspoken tradition forming to allow the thumb to curl over the top of the neck, which in turn makes your hand turn sideways and essentially cuts off the use of your pinky with a lot of licks. Now, while some players with especially large hands can get away with playing with their thumb over the neck, like Jimi Hendrix and his incredibly long fingers on that tiny Strat neck, is a very good example of someone who could reasonably play with their thumb over the neck. But regardless of your hand size, I would encourage everybody to break the habit of allowing that thumb to curl over and allowing your hand to turn sideways, and to instead start playing with their thumb on the back of the neck, and to play with their fingers more open so that you can start using your pinky for more licks. Now, I realize for a lot of players, one of the hardest things that you're going to have to relearn when you fix your hand posture is bending, because part of the comfort of having the thumb over the neck is that it makes it really easy to just kind of squeeze that string towards yourself with your thumb over the neck, because it provides a really good brace. But the fact is that you don't really actually need to do that to bend. So I would encourage a lot of players who are trying to fix their hand posture and use a more palm parallel to the neck kind of orientation, to think of bending less as a process of squeezing and just as much as a process of pushing upward specifically. So you'll notice that even though my thumb is pretty flush on the very back of the neck, I can still perform a whole step bend on the acoustic simply by making a pushing motion upwards with my fingers. If you don't already play with your thumb on the back of the neck and with your palm parallel to the fretboard, it may seem really difficult at first to change how you play with your hand posture. So here are a few exercises that'll help you reinforce that good hand posture and get you into the habit of playing with a more open and proper position. If someone were to ask me what I thought the root cause of choppiness in playing was, I would venture to say that it's probably a lack of synchronicity between the action of fretting and picking. The key to clean playing overall is to make the action of fretting and picking as simultaneous as possible. However, a lot of players may find that their right hand can end up working a lot harder and faster than their left hand in the long run, or on the flip side, players who may rely too much on hammer-ons or pull-offs may find that their right hand falls short when it has to pick single note lines without any legato. Either way, if these insufficiencies aren't intentionally addressed and worked on in your practice routines, then your playing will continue to sound choppier than you may want it to. And the key to fixing this is to simply slow down at least enough to actually feel and observe the simultaneousness of the actions of picking and fretting, whether it be with your fingers or with a pick, or whether it be for chord changes or for lead lines. Remember, only play as fast as you can cleanly. The more you tap into your sense of synchronicity, the better you'll know your own limits and how to overcome them faster by actually scaling back a little bit at a time and then working forward. One way to improve your synchronicity, especially if you're like me and was once in the category of players who rely too much on legato and had kind of a weak right hand when it came to single note lines, is to think of all the licks that you know and play with hammer-ons and pull-offs and to simply play them without them. So if I was to play kind of a standard bluesy rock lick like this, instead of using those hammer-ons and pull-offs like you might be accustomed to, a good habit is to figure out a way to play them without it so it sounds something more like this. Now at first this may seem really awkward, but again, if you slow it down and really observe and feel and tune into that sense of synchronicity in your hands, you'll find that you'll actually be able to play that at full speed with or without the hammer-ons and pull-offs after a while. Another really fun and clever way to make exercises that'll help you improve your synchronicity between your fretting hand and your picking hand is to just kind of randomly choose notes from the chromatic scale, such as this one. So for example, a good way to approach this is to make yourself pick a different amount of notes per string. Say for example, I could play the first 3 notes of the 4 in the sequence on the 6th string, maybe the first 2 notes on the next, maybe all 4 of the notes on the next one, maybe even just one of the notes on the next, and then on to the next one playing another 3, and so on and so forth. To help you get started, I made a synchronicity exercise from this chromatic scale, especially for this video, that you can try. When it comes to improving your sense of control on the guitar, something that goes a really long way towards making your playing sound more mature and more interesting is being able to manipulate dynamics. After all, one of the greatest learning challenges of any instrument is learning to not play too loudly or too quietly, but to instead find all that space in between where you can express yourself more musically. So in the next few minutes, I want to provide you with some tips and some surefire ways that you can learn to more finely manipulate dynamics on guitar. A fun and easy way to gauge your volume and your dynamics with your fingerpicking is to pay attention to your range of motion in your right hand fingers. And what I mean by that specifically is the louder you play, the larger your plucking motion may become, and the quieter you play, the smaller your plucking motion may become. Now granted, the better you get at this, the more subtle it will be, so what you want to shoot with for fingerpicking is to only make the plucking motion as large as it needs to be and no larger to achieve the certain dynamic that you want to go for. Otherwise, if you're playing so hard that you're curling up your fingers a lot, you may have a hard time recovering and getting them back to where you want them to be. The key to all this is to find all the space in between your quietest and loudest dynamics and to figure out just exactly how much force you need to apply to make those changes. A good way to start to practice this is to just start very quiet, and as gradually as you can, just increase the volume until you're playing as loudly as you can play comfortably. To go a step even further, you can also practice making larger jumps in dynamic range and make it more challenging by performing them quicker in succession with each other. For example, it's a good exercise to make abrupt dynamic changes while you're playing a piece, just to see how well you can control the jumps and see just how gradual and subtle you can make your motion from change to change. The key to getting more dynamics out of your pick strumming is often a matter of two things. One being the firmness of your grip on the pick, and secondly, the angle at which you're holding it while you're strumming. So if you want to strum softly, I would suggest loosening your grip on the pick ever so slightly and angling it more up and down as you strum. So if I was to do an exaggerated motion of that, in real time, that would look something like this. To strum louder, what you'd have to do is to grip the pick tighter and just decrease the angle that you're holding it at while you strum a little bit, so that the pick becomes a more rigid surface to strike the strings, which will create a louder sound. As you work on your pick strumming dynamics, make sure to really experiment with different tonalities that you can bring out of the guitar by simply trying new things and playing around with the dynamics and the angle at which you hold the pick and the firmness with which you grip it while you're playing. Mastering dynamics with single note playing with a pick is a unique challenge unto its own because it requires a lot of subtleties. And one aspect of manipulating your dynamics while picking single notes that's actually the same principle as controlling your dynamics while you strum is how you grip the pick. So just as you grip the pick a little softer to strum softer, you can play single notes softer by doing the same thing, and to play louder you grip it tighter. So the point of following the grip principle when it comes to your dynamics here is to realize that unlike with fingerpicking, where you might have to make a slightly larger motion to get a louder sound, with the pick, you don't really have to make your wrist motion any larger to make a louder sound than it needs to be for a softer sound. Like I said, the same with strumming, you just need to grip the pick tighter and make the same motion. So for example, if I was to play softly, so it's a pretty small subtle motion because I'm playing very quietly, but you'll notice I'm able to achieve much louder sounds without really increasing my range of motion in my right hand much at all. So the only thing that I have to do is to just grip the pick tighter and make the same motion. So remember, the more you practice licks and scales and melodies with your pick grip as the main measure of how loud or aggressive you can play, the more you'll be able to feel out those minute differences in pressure you need to achieve lighter to more aggressive sounds. One final thought I'd like to leave you with when it comes to playing guitar with more control is that, like I said earlier, the end goal shouldn't just be to play more fluently and more cleanly, but to also play more expressively. I think the reason why we love a lot of the guitar players that we love is because when we listen to them, it's such a singular and unique and special listening experience because those players found ways to just sound like themselves. And I think that's something that every guitarist should shoot for, is to experiment with ways to make new sounds out of the instrument that you would have never thought to before. So alongside building all your technical skills as time goes on, make sure to always take that time to just experiment and play around on the guitar and play around to backing tracks and just see how you can really find ways to make you sound like you. All that being said, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and if you would like to know any more insider tips on how to play guitar more effortlessly and more expressively, then you can set up a free first lesson with me if you contact me at zrollinsguitarlessons@gmail.com. Happy playing, everybody.